Today, American influence can be seen almost everywhere, from military alliances to global finance, from technology to space and international politics. The United States has become one of the most powerful countries in human history. But there is a question. How did a relatively young nation, born only a few centuries ago, become a global superpower? Was it because of wars? Was it because of money? Or was there something much bigger behind America's rise? The answer is a story of geography, resources, industry, war, technology, and global politics. So, let's go back to the beginning. In 1776, 13 American colonies declared independence from the British Empire. What followed was the American Revolutionary War. After years of conflict, the United States established itself as an independent nation. But the America of that time was nothing like the America we know today. It was a young country with limited military power and an economy far smaller than the great European empires. Yet, America had one enormous advantage: geography. To the east, the Atlantic Ocean, and to the west, the Pacific Ocean. The country was protected by two massive oceans, while possessing an enormous amount of land. And inside that land were vast rivers, fertile farmland, forests, minerals, and enormous natural resources. As the country expanded, new territories, new cities, new farmland, and new markets helped the American economy grow rapidly. Then, something even more important happened. The Industrial Revolution. During the 19th century, factories, railroads, steel production, oil, electricity, and large corporations began transforming America. Railroads connected one side of the country to the other. Goods could move faster, people could travel farther, and businesses could reach enormous new markets. Trade, industry, and technology were turning the United States into a major economic power. But America's rise was not without crisis. Inside the country, a massive conflict was growing. The issue of slavery and the question of political power created an enormous divide between the North and the South. In 1861, that conflict became the American Civil War. For 4 years, the country was devastated by war. But after the conflict, the United States emerged, more unified and increasingly industrialized. And then, American industry began growing at an extraordinary speed. Steel, oil, electricity, automobiles, and new technologies transformed the country's economy. By the beginning of the 20th century, the United States had already become one of the world's major economic powers. But America's biggest rise was still ahead. Then came the First World War. In 1917, the United States entered the conflict. American soldiers, money, industrial production, and supplies provided critical support to the Allied powers. When the war ended, much of Europe was economically exhausted. Countries that had once dominated the world were now deeply weakened. But the United States had become one of the world's major lenders and one of its strongest economies. America was rising, but the greatest transformation was still to come. Then came the Second World War. In 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States entered the war with its full economic and military power. American factories began producing aircraft, tanks, ships, weapons, ammunition, and countless military supplies at an extraordinary speed. The United States had become what many called the arsenal of democracy. At the same time, Europe and Asia were being devastated by the war. Millions of people were affected. Cities were destroyed. And the old European powers were left economically and militarily weakened. When the war ended in 1945, the global balance of power had changed forever. The old powers were weakened, but the United States was economically strong, militarily powerful, and more influential in world politics than ever before. And then, a new confrontation began. The Soviet Union emerged as America's greatest rival. Two superpowers stood on opposite sides of the world, the United States and the Soviet Union. This confrontation became known as the Cold War. It was not simply a military competition. It was a competition over ideology, technology, nuclear weapons, space, economics, and global influence. America built alliances, expanded its economic influence, and invested heavily in science and technology. Then, in 1969, American astronauts reached the moon. The message was clear. America was no longer simply a powerful nation. It had become a global technological and military superpower. For decades, the United States and the Soviet Union continued their rivalry, but eventually, the Soviet system began to weaken. Economic problems, political instability, and growing internal pressure made the Soviet Union increasingly fragile. Then, in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed. And with its greatest rival gone, the United States entered a completely new position in world history. It had emerged as the world's most dominant superpower. But America's rise was never about one single factor. It was the combination of many advantages. Its geography gave it security and access to two major oceans. Its natural resources supported enormous economic growth. Its industrial revolution created massive production capacity. Its wars expanded its military capabilities. Its economy became deeply connected to global trade, and its technology continued pushing the boundaries of what was possible. The American dollar also became one of the most important currencies in the global economy, and American companies played enormous roles in the development of the internet, software, smartphones, artificial intelligence, and modern technology. So, America's rise to superpower status was not simply a story of winning wars. It was a story of geography, resources, industry, economics, military power, technology, and global strategy coming together over more than 2 centuries. A country that once existed under the shadow of European empires eventually became one of the most influential nations in human history. But perhaps there is an even bigger lesson here. No superpower remains at the top forever. The same forces that can take a nation to the top can also change over time. And that raises another question. Will America's dominance continue forever? Or are we already witnessing the beginning of another change in the global balance of power? Because the story of America is not over yet.